Hello, welcome. This is Rahul Reddy, Career Launcher Bangalore. We are looking at the video solutions of the actual paper of CAT 2023 slot 2. Please do keep in mind that we have just received the provisional key. So there might be one or two changes in the key if objections made by students are correct. So if there are questions where the key, I'm not 100% sure about the key, then I'll probably let you know as a part of these recordings. And I'll also explain why a particular choice may not be perfectly correct, or that more than one choice will be correct for these questions. Right. So let's take a look. This is CAT 2023 slot 2 VARC. Let's look at the first reading comprehension passage. Right. Okay. So as usual, let's spend a little time on the passage before going to the questions. The positivists, okay, anxious to stake out their claim for history as a science. Okay. So what's my understanding? Whenever I read a passage, I'm trying to ruthlessly simplify. Okay. There are some people called positivists. Okay. What did they want? They wanted to prove that history is a science. Okay. So how did they go about doing that? They said, let's stick to facts. Okay. First, find out what the facts are. Draw your conclusion from the facts. And they call that the common sense view of history. So simply they said, history is nothing but a collection of facts. Right? All the rest of the paragraph talks about the same thing. Facts are available to historian documents, inscriptions, etc. Hardcore of facts, disputable interpretation, pulpy part of the fruit is more rewarding than the hardcore. So fundamentally, we are saying that the interpretation of history is what makes history interesting. Right? But the positivists actually forget that. And they are so anxious to say that they don't want anything ambiguous, because science is not ambiguous. They want history to be treated exactly like a science where facts are absolutely true, verified. Okay. Now we come to what is a fact then? So according to the common sense view, there are certain basic facts which are same for all historians. When it comes to basic facts, it cannot vary from historian to historian. Again, they've given an example for you to understand. A particular battle of Hastings was fought in 1066 AD. Now, whether A historian or B historian or C historian, whoever tells the story, they cannot change the fact that Battle of Hastings was fought in 106. Okay. But once you have a but, there's going to be a contrasting view. The contrasting view says that the historian is not primarily concerned with facts. That means the primary purpose of historian is not just to say, okay, this happened, this happened. Yes, it is important to know that, yes, this Battle of Hastings was fought. It's important to know it was fought in 1066. Right? He's saying accuracy is important, but the work of a historian goes much beyond accuracy. Merely accurately stating the facts is not the job of the historians, and definitely not the primary job. Yes, the facts should be correct, but historian goes much beyond the fact. For the facts itself, historian relies on auxiliary sciences, archaeology, epigraphy, numismatics, chronology. Okay, for example, a historian wants to know that, okay, particular artifact was found. How old is that artifact? Archaeologists can help. Okay, maybe a chronologist who can do a carbon dating and say, okay, this was 450 years ago. So the facts can come from the supporting sciences. Second thing is, look, he says, how you interpret the facts starts from selection of facts and arranging them in a certain order, right? So which facts that you select can influence opinion. In what way you arrange the fact also influences opinion. Therefore, what the author is trying to say is any historian cannot be absolutely objective. He cannot say these are the facts, take it or leave it. Similarly, all historians will not tell the same story because the same facts, some will select certain facts as more important, some will arrange the facts in a certain order, others will arrange the facts in a different order. For example, he says some historians found that the 1066 Battle of Hastings was important, which is why we remember it as an important event. Another historian might say, okay, it is just another battle. I'll not even talk about it. So, again, all this explanation, what does it mean? He says history cannot be simply facts. Historian will always be selective. To say that hardcore of history exists objectively, that history is independent of the historian, it's independent of historian's opinion, it is independent of historian's interpretation, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है. Okay, so now you look at how the passage starts by some people called positivists. They wanted to prove that history is science, though they said that history is only facts, nothing else. But then the author takes a contra view by saying that history cannot be only facts. Facts is only the starting point. Yes, facts should be accurate, but the primary role of historian goes much beyond just the facts. Necessarily, there will be opinion. Necessarily, there will be subjectivity. Necessarily, there will be interpretation. That's typically the essence of the passage. Okay, we spent significant time on the passage. Now let's look at the question. If the author of the passage were to write a book on the Battle of Hastings, along the lines of his or her own reasoning, what is the reasoning of the author? The reasoning of the author is that history is not mere facts. There has to be interpretation, there might be opinion. Okay, now look at it. Exploring the socio-political economic factors that led to. So it's not just history. Historian is not saying, अच्छा ये बड़ा battle हुआ था 1066 में, somebody won, somebody lost. But that's not the point. He's going to say, why is this battle important? What were the causes that led to the battle? What are the effects after the battle? Then that becomes subjective and opinionated. So one looks like the correct answer, but we'll quickly look at the other choices. Deriving historical facts from documents and inscription. 2 says only focus on the facts. Wrong. Providing a nuanced interpretation. Correct? No problem. By relying on auxiliary sciences. The second part is the problem. So this is a tricky part. These kind of answer choices are partially correct. Why is the second part wrong? Because auxiliary sciences will not provide you with the interpretation. What do auxiliary sciences do? They'll help you establish facts. So that is why 3 is wrong. Provide a detailed timeline of the various events. This is again facts. 1064, this happened, 65, this happened, 66, this happened. So that timeline narrative is also going to be fact. So 1, 3, and 4 are wrong. Sorry, 2, 3, and 4 are wrong. Therefore, 1 is the correct answer. Look at the second one. According to this passage, which one of the following statements best describes the significance of archaeology to historians? Where is archaeology mentioned? Here. In what context? Archaeology is one of the auxiliary sciences. What does the auxiliary sciences tell us? They help historians establish facts. That's it. So, archaeologists help historians ascertain factual accuracy. This looks direct from the passage. But obviously, this is CAT, so we have to check the other choices. Archaeology helps historians to interpret. No, interpretation is not the role of the auxiliary sciences. Archaeologists helps historians carry out their primary duty. This is a little tricky here because auxiliary means supportive. So archaeology does help historians. The problem is with primary duty. What does archaeology help? It helps the historians identify what are the facts. But is that the primary duty? No. The primary duty goes far beyond the. So primary duty of the historian is interpretation. And in that, archaeology does not play a role. Therefore, 3 is wrong. This is a close choice. Archaeology helps historians locate the oldest civilizations in history. This is out of scope. Therefore, 2 is the answer. Third one. Okay, now this is this typical double negatives that CAT plays, right? Somebody should tell them that in English language, double negatives are, I mean, a grammar Nazi would never agree with that, right? Any purist in grammar would say double negative should not be used, right? Okay. Anyway, but right, they're probably just testing your ability to work this out. Okay, so let's see. Double negative normally becomes a positive, right? So first we have to identify the question task. Take a few seconds here. All of the following, if true, can weaken the passage claim that the facts do not speak for themselves except. Okay. First, there is a claim. The passage is making a claim. What claim is it? Facts do not speak for themselves. That means you always require some interpretation, some subjectivity, which is provided by the historian. Okay, so that is a claim. Now, this claim has to be weakened. So what, and this is a negative here. So weaken this claim means facts speak for themselves. So what does this weakening would look like? It says that fact is important, interpretation is not important. Now, 3 of them will weaken. That means 3 of these 4 will say that there is no such thing as interpretation. Fact is the most important. One of them will obviously not weaken. So one of them will probably say that interpretation matters. Is that clear? Okay. Now look at choice 1. A fact by its very nature is objective and universal, does not depend on the context. So what is one saying? Fact hai. Koi bhi context mo, fact is fact. So clearly this will weaken the argument. It is saying that fact speaks for itself. So 1 is not the answer. The truth value of a fact is independent of the historian who expresses it. He's saying historian ka koi subjectivity nahi hota hai. Fact hai. Whether A or B or C, whichever historian expresses the fact, the value is the same. Again, this is saying facts speak for themselves. So this is not the correct answer. Facts can be relative. So what is fact for one person may not be fact. No, 2 and 3 are exact opposite of each other. 2 is saying fact is independent of who says it. 3 is saying facts depend from person to person. So obviously 1 has to be wrong, the other has to be correct. If 2 is wrong, then 3 is the correct answer. 4th one, the order in which series of facts is presented does not have a bearing. Again, we are saying in whichever order you look at fact, the meaning is the same. Again, it says that there is no role for interpretation. This is also wrong. Now, even if you are not very clear about the question task, for except questions, 3 of the sentence answer choices will go in one direction. The odd one out is the answer we are looking for. In this case, the odd one out is option 3. 4th one. All of the following describe the common sense view of history, except. What is the common sense view of history? It's given here. Right? It says history is nothing but a collection of facts. Interpretation is wrong, disputable. Facts are sacred. That is the common sense view. Right. Okay. Now, so 3 out of 4 will say that facts are the only important thing in history. And one of them will say interpretation matters. Okay, look at this. History can be objective. Objective meaning there is no interpretation. Whichever historian expresses, history is same. Real history is found in ancient engravings, archival documents. What do you get in engravings and documents? Facts. Only positivist method can lead to historical knowledge. What do positivist method believe in? Only facts. Okay. Now that leaves one. History is like science. This is actually partially correct again. There is nothing wrong with the first sentence. A selective system, the selective system of cognitive orientations to reality. This selectivity that comes in, that shows that, facts alone are not important. There is some interpretation that is coming. Again, whether you get one or not, the other option is you eliminate 2, 3, and 4. Right. This is the Lot 2 actual paper of CAT 2023, and we are looking at the second passage for the video solutions. Again, let's spend some time on the passage before going into the questions. It starts by saying that over the past 4 centuries, liberalism has been so successful as an ideology. Okay, but after 4 centuries, now it is disintegrating. Liberalism is failing. Why is it failing? One reason is arrogance, and the other is internal contradictions. Now, this is an opinion of Patrick Deneen, who is a professor. And he has given reasons, his analysis of why this person, Patrick Deneen, believes that liberalism is dying. So he says equality of opportunity has created some problem. Democracy has degenerated into theater of the absurd. Technological advances are reducing even more areas of work into meaningless drudgery. The gap between liberalism's claims about itself and the lived reality of citizens is so wide that the lie can no longer be accepted. He's saying liberalism makes certain claims, but in reality, those claims don't appear to be true. In fact, there's a large gap between the claim and reality. So people are unwilling to accept liberalism and the arguments because they see that the reality is very, very different. And he's given an example, right? 1,000 private planes taking people to Davos to discuss the shared future in a fragmented world. Obviously, these are elite people going in private planes. What will they discuss? Shared future. Now, Deneen does an impressive job. So now this is third party. Somebody else is reviewing the work of Deneen. So what is the author saying about Deneen? About Professor Deneen and his work? He says, yes, currently there is a mood of disillusionment, and Professor Deneen explains it well. He captures that mood very well. But, so again there is a change. When he concludes that this is a failure of liberalism, that part the author disagrees. He's saying, yes, liberalism has problems. Those problems are well described by Professor Deneen. But when he claims that that means liberalism is dead or dying, here I don't seem to agree. He argues that essence of liberalism lies in freeing individuals from constraint. In fact, liberalism contains a wide range of intellectual traditions that provide different answers to the question, etc., etc. Different answers to the question of how to trade off the relative claims of rights and responsibilities. So he's saying there is a problem with the definition that Professor Deneen takes. Deneen, his definition of liberalism is that no constraints, right? Full freedom. Okay, but according to the author of this passage, he's saying liberalism talks about a balance between freedom and responsibilities. Yes, and there are different theories about how to get this balance. Then that's the first problem. The first problem is Professor Dinin's definition of what is liberalism itself is not correct. The second problem is that he fails to recognize that liberalism, yes, is in trouble right now, but it has the ability to address its problems and change and reform itself, become better. As an example, he said, some of the problems that we have today were already there in late 19th century America. But that did not lead to the death of liberalism, because they were reformers and they were liberal reformers. They identified the problems, they resolved it. So similarly, so why are we giving the analogy of late 19th century? Because the author believes that yes, liberalism today has problems, but it had problems in 19th century also. Then it succeeded in reforming itself. Perhaps it can still succeed and reform itself. So I will not agree with Professor Dinin when he says that liberalism is going to die. So identifying the problem, Professor Dinin does a good job. He tells us what all is wrong with liberalism. But his conclusion that liberalism is not going to survive, it's going to die, that conclusion I disagree with. Okay. Now, the best way to read why liberalism failed. So, now what are we talking about? We're talking about a book review. A book written by Professor Dinin, which is being reviewed by this particular author of this passage. Okay. Now, this passage has a few questions which are debatable. Out of 4, probably 2 are little debatable. I'll explain my reasons and then you can take a call on this. All of the following statements are evidence of the decline of liberalism today, except. So 3 of the 4 statements should give evidence that liberalism has declined, except one. Now look at it. Let me quickly erase the ink here. Yeah. Look at this. Where does it talk about decline of liberalism? Right in the first passage. Now liberalism is, sorry. Yeah. Now it is disintegrating. So what is, the claim is made that liberalism is disintegrating, then evidence has to be provided. Right? So he says democracy has degenerated into a theater of absurd, which is given here. Okay. Technological advances are reducing ever more area of work into meaningless drudgery. That's given here. The gap between liberalism's claims about itself and the lived reality is now so wide that the lie cannot be accepted. That's given here. So 3 of 4 are given in the first passage. You may then get tempted. Okay, then 4th must be the answer. Let's see what they're saying in 4th. The creation of a business aristocracy, the rise of vast companies, etc. Okay, where is that? Creation of business aristocracy, the rise of vast companies, corruption of politics, etc. Now, what is the context here? He says the late 19th century saw America suffering from many of the problems that are reappearing today. So the problems of 19th century, but there are also problems of today. And the problems of today will explain why there is a problem with liberalism. So in that sense, 4 is also correct. Now, all 4 have been stated in the passage. What do we do? Right? So my approach was to say, okay, the author is talking about evidence. So what would be evidence? Right? So there I said, democracy has degenerated into a theater of absurd. This we can kind of eliminate. Creation of business aristocracy, rise of vast companies, this is also fact. right? So 2 and 4 are facts, 1 and 3. Now this is where it becomes close. Technological advances are reducing areas of work into meaningless drudgery. This might be true, but is it evidence of decline of liberalism? It's mentioned in the passage. Is that evidence of decline in liberalism? Third one, the gap between liberalism's claims about itself and the lived reality is so wide, like cannot be accepted. Now, is this evidence or is this an opinion? The entire what is the right answer depends on this. Now, Cat has claimed that 3 is a fact. The actual gap exists, it is objective, and therefore 3 is not the answer and 1 is the answer. I'm not so sure. I would like to believe that the gap between liberalism claim and lived reality is so different, seems to be an opinion of Professor Tinin and not an established fact. So if we say that this is not a fact, then it is not evidence, it's only an opinion, then 3 becomes the answer. Okay, so this is a claim. So it's a close one. There is a logic why Cat's answer of 1 is correct, but there's also a logic why option 3 is correct. So we will probably look at trying to make an argument for objection, and let's see how the IM body will whether they will accept or reject the objection that we will make. Okay. Second passage. The author of the passage refers to the Davos elite to illustrate his view. So what typically is he saying? He's saying 1,000 private planes. They go to Davos in private plane. Who goes by private plane? Obviously the ultra rich, the elite. Okay. So by going on a private plane is not the problem. The problem is they are going in a private plane and they are going to discuss how to create a shared future in a fragmented world. What future are they sharing with the common people? They are completely separated because they're ultra rich and they travel in, the private plane is an example to show how much of an elite they are, right? So that is the hypocrisy that we are talking about. So the hypocrisy of the liberal rich, right, who profess to subscribe to liberal values, but they corner a lot of the, right? So the fact that rise in liberalism has led to a greater interest in shared futures from unlikely social classes doesn't work, because there's only one social class which is going to Davos, right? Only the ultra rich. The debate on liberalism have been captured by the rich, who have managed to insulate themselves from economics. So debate around liberalism has not been captured by the rich. Yes, the rich are going to discuss an issue, but doesn't mean that only the rich are allowed to discuss liberalism. The unlikelihood of a return to the liberalism of the past, as long as the rich continue to benefit, no, this is out of scope. We are not talking whether the liberalism of the past is better, whether that should even come back. That really is out of scope. Okay, so 4 makes a lot of sense. The author of the passage is likely to disagree with all of the following statements except. That means he will disagree with 3 and he will agree with 1. Only 1 of the 4 he will agree with. Unfortunately, here also there's a little bit of an issue here. Liberalism was a dominant ideal in the past century. It was true because it was dominant for about 4 centuries. Okay. The only thing you could say is, look, author says successful, does it mean dominant? Which is, but it is so successful that it drove other competing ideologies out of the battle. So clearly that would mean dominant. So that part we can say. It had to reform itself to remain so. That is true. Okay. The late 19th century, for example, there were problems. Liberalism led to problems, but it was able to reform itself. So 1 looks like a correct answer. Let's look at the others. If we accept that liberalism is a dying ideal, we must work towards a substitute. Author will not agree with this. He is going to disagree because he does not agree that liberalism is dying. So he says liberalism is in trouble. We have to look at how to reform it. We are not saying let it die and look at a substitute. The essence of liberalism lies in greater individual freedoms. Sorry, this is the wrong definition of Mr. Dineen. Right? Dineen argues that essence of liberalism lies in freedom. But our author says that liberalism contains a wide range of intellectual tradition, and all of them are trying to find the balance, the trade-off between rights and responsibilities. So it's not just only about freedom and expression, it's also about responsibility, finding the right balance. So he will disagree with this. So 2 and 3, claims about liberalism's disintegration are exaggerated and misunderstand its core features. Okay, now this is interesting. Misunderstanding the core features is probably correct because the author claims that definition itself, Professor Dineen gets it wrong. Right. The problem is with the first part. Does the author say that claims of disintegration are exaggerated? May not be. What the author is he's not saying that claims are exaggerated. He's saying that the conclusion that it is going to die is the problem. Because the author agrees that problems exist, but he does not agree that it will die. He believes that there is a chance that it will reform and revive itself. Now, there becomes a question between 1 and 4. I personally felt that 4 can be inferred, and the author would probably like to agree because he would probably disagree with 4 because he is stating that, look, I don't agree with the conclusions drawn by Dineen, though I agree with his analysis of the problems of liberalism. So Dineen says liberalism has many problems. Author says, yes, I agree. Dineen says, therefore, liberalism is going to die. Author says, no. So in that sense, to say, and similarly, Dineen says that liberalism is all about freedom. Author disagrees. So definition itself, there's a difference, which means 4 seems to be something that the author would agree with. But then so is 1. So what do we take as an answer? Right? So which out of 1 and 4 is the author likely to agree with? So the cat has gone with 1 as the correct answer. Right? So between 1 and 4, as I said, there is an argument to say that 4 is also possible. In fact, the author specifically says that Professor Dineen is misunderstanding the definition itself, right? But there are 2 basic flaws of the argument of Professor Dineen. 1 talks about the second flaw, and 4 talks about the first flaw. So cat has gone with 1, and in that sense, 1 is more direct. 4 requires a little bit of interpretation, which is probably, I think it's fair to say that we could agree with the cat's interpretation, but it's extremely close. Lot depends on what was the area of the passage that the student was focusing on while solving this question. The author faults Dineen's conclusions for all the following reasons. Right? 9. Extreme pessimism about the future of liberalism and predictions of ultimate decline. That's correct, because author says, I cannot agree with the conclusion that liberalism is going to die. Its failure to note the examples where liberalism has managed to reverse itself, which means that there were times in history where liberalism had problems, but it was able to reform and revive. And those things he has failed to, that's also correct. Narrow definition of liberalism, only focusing on individual freedoms, that is also a fault that the author finds with Professor Denny. It's repeated harking back to pre-modern notions of liberalism. This is out of scope, which is why this is the answer. So 3 of these are criticisms of Professor Denin by the author of this passage, except one. Right. We are looking at the CAT 2023 slot 2 reading comprehension. This is the 3rd passage. So let's understand the passage first and then look at the questions. Interesting passage. Appears easy on the surface. It's not that easy. The second-hand September campaign led by Oxfam, right, seeks to encourage shopping at local organizations and charities as an alternative to fast fashion brands. So there is a belief that fast fashion is not good and alternate would be to buy second-hand clothes. Right. Why is that? Because through online shopping, customers are unintentionally or sometimes maybe intentionally, they're contributing to an industry that uses more energy than aviation. For example, British buy more garments than any other country in Europe. And most of these clothes end up in landfills. Okay, so we are now saying that fast fashion, what does fast fashion means? You buy a lot of clothes and then you also dispose them. You keep changing clothes. And this habit of buying a lot of clothes and disposing the older ones, it is creating environmental problems. So that is a problem. So what is the solution? The solution given is, look, buy second hand. Don't throw away, recycle. So I have purchased a dress, I don't want to use it anymore. I sell it rather than throw it away. And somebody else buys it and reuses it. And that is what the second hand September campaign is all about. The most common solution to the problem is second hand shopping. So retailers are selling consigned clothing. Lot of stores are selling consigned clothing. Here means second hand clothing. And it has got a name called thrifting. And it's become a trendy practice. There are many second hand or vintage shops in London. Okay, so far so good. There's a problem. Problem was when you're quickly using and throwing garments, there is a lot of environmental waste. So solution is to, instead of throw away, recycle, or you sell and people buy and use second-hand clothes. But is this solution actually effective? That is the question. It says that older clothes shed more microfibers. And that's a separate type of pollution, microfiber pollution. So the author says that, look, this recycling or buying second-hand clothes has a separate problem for the environment. So what is the solution then? You should better off buy high-quality items that shed less microfibers, also last longer. So this solves both problems. It does not cause microfiber, and so the solution is not to buy second-hand clothes. The solution is to buy good quality clothes and make them, which are durable, and make them last longer. Right? Instead of buying every year fresh clothes and throwing away the old ones, make clothes last for a longer period of time. Okay. Now, luxury brands would not circulate their latest season to be sold at a cheaper price. So luxury brands don't want to discount. Right? Now, there is always a market for consignment, that there are people who are willing to buy second-hand clothes, But there's also a whole generation of people who will not buy second-hand, who will only buy new. They will not buy second-hand luxury goods. And most of the high-end retailers, which is luxury brands, they would not think about environment or sustainability. They would think about their brand image. Saying that if they sell second-hand clothes, then brand image will go down. Why? Because there are some people who believe that it's not a done thing. There are certain people who believe that you should only buy first-hand clothes. Okay. So now let's look at the question. The central idea of the passage would be undermined. Now let's look at what the passage structure was. The passage structure was, it started by saying that fast fashion is creating environmental problems because a lot of clothes are purchased and a lot of clothes are disposed. The disposal was causing environmental problems. So the suggested solution, or the common solution, was second-hand clothes. Right? Because instead of throwing away or disposing them as waste, you are recycling the clothes. But this solution also has a problem. What is the problem? This is microfiber pollution. So second-hand clothing solves one problem but creates another problem. So what is the solution now? Solution is, rather than recycle clothes, better is to buy high quality clothes. What is the advantage of high quality clothes? They give away less microfibers. So this problem is solved. They also are long lasting, which means that less waste is created per year. So that is the solution. And in the end, the passage talks about, okay, so if that is the central idea, then you want to undermine the passage. So the passage is saying second-hand clothing is not a solution to the environmental problem. Now, if you want to undermine it or weaken it, you have to say that second-hand clothes is a solution. Okay. So what is the problem with second-hand clothes? That they release microfibers, which causes microfiber pollution. So if you want to undermine the idea, you have to say that they do not release microfiber pollution, or there might be some way to solve the microfiber issue. So second-hand clothes sold only high-end quality clothes. If this option 1 is true, will it solve the problem? Yes, because it is given in the passage that high-end or high-quality clothes do not shed microfiber, which means microfiber problem is solved. So this seems to be the correct answer. Okay. Clothes are not thrown and burnt in landfills. This only solves one part of the problem. It doesn't solve the microfiber part of the problem. Primark and Boohoo recycled their clothes. Who are Primark and Boohoo? Fast fashion brands. Okay. Suppose fast fashion brands, instead of throwing away stuff, if they recycle, will that solve the problem? Yes, it will solve the problem of landfills and throwing away, but it will not solve the problem of microfibers. Therefore, this doesn't work. Customers bought all their clothes online. That is out of scope. In fact, this would actually make the problem worse, because buying online is one of the reasons why people are buying too much and therefore also throwing away too much. So we eliminated 2, 3, and 4, and 1 therefore must be the answer. According to the author, companies like ThreadUp have not caught on in the US for all the following reasons except. So out of 4, there are 3 reasons given, which explains why ThreadUp has not been successful in the US, in the UK. Companies like ThreadUp have not yet caught on the UK. So the answer is going to be here. One is, luxury brands would not want to sell their latest season stock at a cheaper price. Because when you're selling second-hand, you're selling cheaper. They don't want their products to be sold second-hand at cheaper prices. So luxury brands don't want their product to be devalued, sold at lesser price. They also want to maintain brand image. Brand is more important than environment. So 4 is also correct. Now, between 1 and 3, recycling is currently not financially attractive. So unless recycling becomes cost effective. So unless recycling becomes cost effective would imply that currently recycling is not cost effective, especially for luxury brands. So 3 is also true. Okay, is 1 true? British don't buy second-hand clothing. This is clearly false. Because London is the home to many second-hand or commonly coined vintage shops across the city. It is given. So you cannot say that British don't buy second-hand. Similarly, he says there is a market for consignment. There is also a generation of people who have been taught that only new products should be purchased. So it is not that British don't buy second-hand clothes. There is a certain set of people who are willing to buy and certain set of people who will never buy. Right. Which is why 1 is the answer here. Let's go to the third question. The art of thrifting, as described in the passage, can be considered ironic because, okay, what is irony? Irony is you expect something to go in one direction, it goes in a different direction. So in this case, what is the irony? The irony is thrifting is defined as buying second-hand clothes is meant to solve environmental problems. It's supposed to be a sustainable solution. But irony is it actually causes environmental pollution because of the emission of microfibers. So a solution to pollution actually creates pollution. That's the irony. So has created environmental problems. Okay, based on the passage, we can infer that opposite of fast fashion, slow fashion would most likely refer to clothes. So fast fashion means you buy clothes quickly at cheaper prices and dispose them quickly. So the opposite of them would be you buy clothes at a costlier price and they last longer. So high quality and long lasting. Yes, we are looking at CAT 2023 slot 2, the VARC section, and this is the 4th passage, right? And this is thankfully one of the easiest of the passages given in this particular slot. So he basically says that the language of Europe is translation, okay? And he's now saying how Netflix is using translation, especially in Europe, right? So typically, they dub in 34 languages and use subtitles in a few more languages. Okay, so why are they doing this? Why are they dubbing content? Because the economics works, right? American audiences, America is the major market for Netflix. They are willing to watch content made in other countries if it is dubbed or subtitled. So a French show like Lupin can become a global hit. So originally, 75% of Netflix original content was American. Now it's about 50%, which means they are broad basing their content. They are saying, let's make content in various languages and from various parts of the world, and we can always dub them into different languages. So you can make something in France, release it in US, make something in US, release it in Germany, like that. Then they said, okay, but dubbing doesn't always work. Comedy does not work, or sometimes doesn't work. Murder mysteries seem to work. And bloodthirsty maelstrom between Romans and tribesmen, which is basically barbarians, right? So violent kind of conflict kind of movies, war kind of movies seem to work. Okay. then it's also dependent on which country can make content which is more universally acceptable. For example, German television is not always built for export, which means that content made in Germany kind of struggles when it is translated or dubbed into other languages. Okay. The other problem is that in Europe, national broadcasters still dominate. So streaming is only 33% of the market. The national broadcasters like BBC for UK, they are the main. Now, how do some people look at Netflix and other streaming services as a threat? They believe that their culture is under threat, saying that, Netflix and other streaming services will push American culture. So Netflix kind of seems to be stuck in an uncanny valley somewhere in the mid-Atlantic. So what is Atlantic Ocean? It is the ocean between US and Europe. So by trying to become a global, by trying to make content which works across the globe, they are stuck in between. That means they are now neither American nor fully Europe. Because they have removed, well, making content, they have removed cultural quirks. They have removed stuff which is more American. They've also removed stuff which is more European because they're trying to make something which works everywhere. But says the author, they should not be. Who should not be? The people who see this as a threat. European politicians are nervous about streaming services. They should not be. He says that American companies will facilitate European integration. Right? So just like Google Translate helps a French guy understand German, German guy understand Italian, the streaming shows, the content on Netflix, which is made in one country, released in another country, can actually work as a unifying force. Okay. Look at this question. Based on the information provided, all of the following are true except. So three are true, one is false. Only half of Netflix original programming is now produced in America. This is a direct fact. It says earlier 75% was American. Now the figure is half. So one is clearly true. Netflix has been able to transform itself into truly European entity. No, that's a stretch. The author says it is kind of in the middle, neither fully American nor fully Europe. So this is probably the answer, but we'll check the others. Right? European television productions have the potential to become global hits. Yes, something like Lupin is given as an example. Right? So shows such as Lupin can become global. That means potentially. It doesn't mean that every show will become a hit, but they have the potential. So this is correct. This is a true statement. Remember, we are looking for something that is not true. National broadcasters dominate in EU. That's also correct. Streaming services is only 1/3. It is national broadcasters which hold the major viewership. So 3 options are true, therefore 2 must be the answer. You could also pick 2 because in the passage it is stated that Netflix is kind of stuck in the middle Atlantic, neither completely American nor completely European. Right. Which one of the following research findings would weaken the author's conclusion in the final paragraph? Okay, final paragraph. What is the author saying? The author saying American companies will facilitate European integration. That means they will help in European countries become closer to each other. And that includes Netflix. Because Netflix and other streaming services puts the same content into different homes, of course, dubbing it in different languages. So that will ensure that there'll be some common ground for countries across Europe. So his argument is that by taking content, dubbing it across languages, by people across different countries watching the same shows, they become closer. Europe becomes more united, right? But you want to weaken. That means you want to say that Europe will not become united, or these kind of shows will not be successful. So research shows that Netflix hits produced in France are popular with North American. This is out of scope. Why? It is saying it is true actually, but it doesn't. It is out of scope for this question, because this question is about countries within Europe become more united. Option 1 is talking about France and America. Research shows that older women watch romantic comedies, younger women historical fiction. Irrelevant again, right? Does it talk about across countries people having similar tastes and therefore they become closer? No. It is talking about age. Okay, not across Germans, Italians, and different countries and different languages. Research shows that there's a wide variance in popularity across different countries. Now, across different countries is what I was looking for. Across different countries, people don't watch the same content. Something is popular in one country, something else is popular in the other country, which means it is not working as a unifying force. So 3 is my answer. But I'll quickly look at 4. Research shows that Netflix has been losing market share to other streamers. Okay, that is irrelevant again. The focus is, will Netflix and other streaming companies, what impact they will have by doing this dubbed content? That is the focus. It is not Netflix versus Amazon Prime versus Hotstar tapes. Okay, so 2, the answer should be 3. Based on the information provided in the passage, which one of the hypothetical Netflix show would be most successful? Okay, this is okay. This comes from the 3rd paragraph. It says not everything works across borders. Comedy sometimes struggles. Okay, so there is a risk that comedy may not work, especially when you dub it and release it in a different country. One is, the jokes become a little flatter when you translate. And second is, comedy always has some cultural context. If the context changes, then you don't get the comedy. Right? Anyway, so Italian comedy show, will it work? We don't know, may not work, because comedy does not translate easily. Similarly, whodunit means murder mystery and bloody fighting conflict movies. They work. They have a more universal appeal. That means people of different countries seem to enjoy it. Okay, so murder mystery. Okay, this is good. Set in North Africa and France, it doesn't seem to matter because we're talking about universal appeal. So this looks like a correct answer. A transatlantic romantic drama set in Europe and America. Again, romantic drama, does it work? Doesn't work? We don't really know. Original German TV science fiction. It is given that German television is not always built for export. That means mostly German content doesn't work across the border, which means 4 is wrong. Therefore, 3 should be the correct answer. 1, comedy doesn't always work. Eliminate 1. German content doesn't work well abroad. So eliminate 4. That leaves between 2 and 3. We don't know much about romantic drama, but it is given that whodunits are popular across borders. Therefore, 3 is my answer. Okay, last one. How does the author see the rise of Netflix? The politicians are worried. They see it as a threat. How does the author see it? He says it's a unifying force. Okay, simple, straightforward answer to add. Right, so that's it as far as the 4th passage is concerned.